So happy to introduce my friend Steve. Now, I've known Steve for 12, 13 years, and I serve as his board president for Ultimate Escape, which means technically I get to tell him everything that he does wrong, and he can't get mad at me about it. So now, Steve and I go way back. I love him dearly as a friend. He's one of the best presenters I know. He has all the knowledge that is so foundational, not only to all the items related to the misuse of sex or to God's plan for sexuality, but in relationships. And just really appreciate him and Holly, and of course Gilly is here with him. And I know that today we're going to be blessed focusing on how to talk to your kids about sex is so important. Because the world comes at them a lot faster than when you and I were kids. And so really appreciate Steve you coming and sharing with us. Let me kick us off with a prayer, and then I'll turn it over to him. Father, we just thank you for the blessing of being your children. And we thank you for Jesus and the love that's shown for us, God. And we pray that we as parents and grandparents and people who know and love kids, God, that we pay attention, because this world is a tough place to grow up in, and God, and we're thankful for the love that you share and the forgiveness you give us. And through Jesus we pray. Amen.
Girl, come up here. Good girl. And sit. And down. That was a double look like, do I really have to lay down? Yesterday she gave me a humph and then lay down, so we'll see how long. She'll probably get up a time or two. This is somewhat new for her in this role. Talking to children about sex, extremely important. If you had 4 hours, I would just start in on the stories. Because from the counseling seat that I occupy week in, week out, there are so many stories that could have been really different if people had been educated about sexuality earlier in their life. Jerry shared kind of a quick introduction about what the ministry does, but from the counseling standpoint, I operate as a pastoral counselor. I don't do mental health counseling. I do a very specialized area, and I have a degree in counseling, but I do it under the pastoral counseling umbrella. And my primary focus for the last 8 years or so is sexual trauma. I've listened to hundreds of stories of sexual trauma, and the vast majority, if somebody had just talked to that child or that adult when they were a child at age 4 or 5 or 7 or 8, would have been a very different story. And so I'm glad that you're here. I hope that what we cover today is helpful. We have some resources that you are welcome to grab on your way out, that hopefully will help equip you for the next step. Like when you walk out of here, what do you do next? And this will help me. How many of you are parents of children who are under the age of 10? Okay, that's a lot of hands. Do we have any grandparents in the group here today? Okay, a few. Super. Thank you guys for being here. Your opportunity to be a voice of truth in the life of your grandchild is huge, and hope that this is helpful to you also. So our tagline with Ultimate Escape is you can learn a lot about sex from and then fill in the blank. Chocolate bunny, pool stick, game of checkers, the list goes on and on. But today we're going to learn a lot about sex. And I don't have is there a clicker up here, or do I just do this and somebody advances the slide? How's this going to work? Okay, so I'm going to just pretend I have a clicker. I'll do that, and that'll take us to the next slide. Okay, super, thank you. So just a quick sign of unhealthy. Didn't want to take a lot of time to do statistics, just one snapshot. Now, notice this statistic is 2016. This is basically a 10-year-old statistic. 33% of females, 67% of males ages 13 to 24 seek out porn at least once a month. Just with the direction of our culture, would expect that age continues to drop and the percent continues to get much larger. Just from an anecdotal standpoint, It's a universal thing. Kids, young kids are getting exposed to sexually explicit material, and it creates a very unhealthy dynamic. So let's try to focus on how do we change the dynamic from unhealthy to healthy. And one, we begin early and we be consistent in equipping our kids and arming them with accurate information. And what you learn about sex from a sports car, we're fixing to discover. So I've got my little sports car, and I've put a target out here, this little communion cup. I'm going to put it right center stage, and my goal is for the car to go straight and bump right into that communion cup. So I'm just going to line it up. Now we've got it pointed in the right direction. There's a little bit of a journey to go, but it's pointed in the right direction. It's all gassed up and powered up and hopefully ready to roll. Let's see. And it's going to go right to that communion cup. Well, it pointed in the right direction. Let's try that one more time. Maybe I need to have a more stern talk with it. Go straight to the communion cup. Let's see if that makes any difference. Nope, it's just not going to work. So let's try it different. This time, we're going to point it in the right direction, but every time it starts to get off course, we'll do a little course correction. And it may not be a perfect journey, but eventually it goes and it lands where it needs to. Okay, the idea, instead of a one-time talk that we're sweating bullets dreading, and then we have the talk, and it's traumatic for us, it's traumatic for our kids. Nobody's comfortable with it. And then we hope that one talk, and now they're supposed to just go and make it through our culture in a sexually healthy way until they're adults. Maybe a different attempt would be more productive. And that's the consistent conversations over a lifetime. And every time we see that there's a need for a course correction, we have another conversation. And sometimes we have continuing conversations, not because we see a need for course correction, but just because another topic comes up, or the culture is talking about something, or one of their friends is involved in something. It just creates these little conversations. My encouragement is, when I say little, like 2 to 3 minutes, very brief and literally conversation. It's not a mini sermon. It's a conversation, it's a dialogue back and forth. What do you think, or what have you experienced, or what do you hear? What have you seen? And let's talk. But again, the emphasis is on consistent. If you would bump us to the next slide, there are a couple of books out on the table by Dr. Jim Burns. Jim Burns is the director of Homeward, Homeword, Homeward Ministries. They have a daily radio program that's also available as a podcast. But he's written several books about Christian worldview and sexuality. A few are for teens, but 2 are for younger children. This is God Made Your Body. It's for ages 3 to 5. And this is the follow-up, How God Makes Babies, ages 6 to 9. Again, from the chair that I sit in, if every parent would start at age 3 or 4 with this information, and the beauty of the book is you just have to read the book. It's not up to you to come up with what am I going to talk about. You just read the book. The graphics are age appropriate and fabulous. And then I follow up with this, and it just begins the conversation, and all you have to do is be able to read the book. You don't have to go get a degree in sex therapy to be able to raise your children and equip them. But in the introduction to this first book, he says it's important to introduce children to the foundational theme that God created their body and it's special. You begin laying out for them a healthy view of their body and the very basics of sexuality. He goes on to say, you'll be establishing the trust that they can come to you when they're older and talk about these issues. I am a big believer in the perspective that he shares. If we'll begin the conversation early, it creates a natural dialogue, and kids learn. In almost every interaction of every moment, we're communicating messages. Sometimes we're communicating messages we don't mean to communicate, we don't want to communicate, we're just not aware that we're communicating it. And by not talking about something, we're communicating it's not okay to talk about, or this is secret, or you're not supposed to talk about it. Churches for generations historically have not talked about sex. You might talk about lust and how terrible lust is, and you're going to hell if you lust, but churches typically don't present God's vision for sexuality. We don't talk about it in a healthy way. And what that communicates to people is sex is dirty or it's wrong or it's bad. Again, most churches aren't intending to communicate that. And I'm not talking about any one particular church, just Christianity in general. But if we begin talking about things, it says it's okay to talk about it. It says this is normal. It says this is just a part of life that everybody deals with. And it's no longer a taboo thing. I will share this story. We have 4 adult children, 3 boys, 1 girl, boy, and then girl and boy. Our daughter Savannah, when she was about, probably 8, 9 years old, she would have been in about 4th grade at the time, it began every night. Now, from day one, if I was in town, I was the one I was the tucker-inner. I tucked our kids in every night. And we would typically read. And so around age 8, the question was, can we read the baby book? So we read the baby book. And almost every night, can we read the baby? We read the baby. I don't know how many times we have read the baby book. But Savannah knew a whole lot more accurate information than probably some adults do, because we read the baby book all the time. At one point, we got a phone call from our minister who had 2 girls the same age ballpark as Savannah, and they would spend the night with each other sometimes. At one point, we got a phone call. Savannah keeps talking about we'd rather us be the ones who are educating our daughters about that. And so we had to rein that in a little bit. But again, given the 2 options, 1, it's a big secret and she's having to learn about it somewhere else, or 2, she knows good information and she's sharing it and needs some tighter boundaries around who she's sharing it with, I'll take that one any day. And I'll also take she's sharing true information, not something else that she's heard from some other source. So I grant you, there potentially is, we have to learn how to navigate it well when we're equipping our kids. But again, given the choice of the world's going to equip them with misinformation or values that we don't agree with, or we equip them, to me, that's the better one to end up with. Age-appropriate topics. So starting at age 3, what are the things that people or that children need to know? God made you. God made your body. God made every part of your body. There's no part of your body that is bad. There's no part of your body that's dirty. There's no part of your body to be ashamed about. They're all parts of your body. And they all have names. You have hair, you have a nose, you have eyes, you have fingers, you have toes, you have a penis or a vagina. It just is parts of your body. Now, again, depending on your background, you might have to work through some stuff, some emotional baggage first to be able to say words out loud and you not communicate some energy that contaminates the conversation. If so, I would encourage you, take the time, work through that, practice saying words out loud, and the roof's not going to fall in if you tell your child every part of their body and you're using words that normally you don't use. It's okay. And there probably will be at some point they'll say a word that is embarrassing, but you just navigate that moment. I had a teacher when I was in high school. My social studies teacher went to one of the large churches in town, and he told the story to our class. Not sure he should have told this story to our class, but he did. That they were in church, and his 4-year-old son was in a moment that something wasn't right, and he just said out loud, screamed it out for the whole church here, "Daddy, my penis hurts." Okay. Embarrassing moment. But again, that moment also illustrates that that child has been taught appropriate words for the body, that he didn't have to use some name and we laugh about it and giggle about it or whisper about it. It's the part of the body. Boys and girls are different. God made girls, God made boys. God gave boys a penis, God gave girls a vagina. That they're different. Now, it's not just physical, that there are mental differences. We're wired differently. But those are just age-appropriate topics. Define appropriate touch. What is okay, what is not. If we go to the doctor because a part of your body that's private needs some help, I'm trying to put this in 3, 4, 5-year-old terms, that part of your body needs some help, it's okay for the doctor to see that so we can help make it better. But if a babysitter asks you to show them your private part, if Uncle so-and-so or cousin so-and-so asks to see that or shows you their private part, that's not okay. And if that happens, here's what you can do. You can come and tell us as soon as you can, recognizing that they may not be in a position where in that moment they literally can come and tell you, but they can tell you when they're able to tell you. And if that happens, then we'll figure out a way to deal with that. We just leave it in pretty basic terms. Babysitters, friends, relatives, just because they know you, just because they're our friends, doesn't mean it's okay for them to ask you to do this or that. The idea is, as young children, that they're comfortable with their body and they have some good basic boundaries and they're equipped with information if something happens, which unfortunately in our current culture, it happens a lot. If something happens, they have permission from you to talk about it. Because in the moment, it may be couched in a context of this is secret, this is something we don't talk about. I had one young teenager whose youth minister was sexually abusing him and put it in the terms of this, everybody does this, just nobody talks about it. And boom, that just locked it in the secret vault. No, that's not true. No, not everybody does this, and it's true people don't talk about it, but it's not true that everybody doesn't do it, and it's true that people should be talking about it. But ages 3 to 5, that's the goal. They're comfortable with their body, and they have some basic boundaries and know how to handle situations if they come up. Ages 6 to 9, they're ready for a little bit more information, the basics of sexuality. I think every child, especially in today's culture, needs to just know when they hear the word sex, what is that talking about? Well, it's talking about how babies get made sometimes. But here's basically what, again, just a simple definition that satisfies curiosity. Because if they hear the word and they don't have any idea what it means, well, pretty young kids have learned how to use Google. Or they can ask a friend, and who knows what's going to come up. But if they already know basically what it is, then when they hear it, there's not a curiosity. There's not a mystique. There's not a draw to the forbidden. I know what that is. My parents told me what that is. Boom, here we go on. Where do babies come from? They don't come from Walmart or a stork, or you don't just go to a hospital and come back with a baby. Here's how God makes babies. Again, to me, that's the value of the book, is it just walks through in age-appropriate terms with pictures that are enough to satisfy curiosity, but not overly graphic. Basics of anatomy. And again, recommendation, if we're believers, we're putting this all in a Christian worldview. This is how God designed it. This is how God made the body. This is how God made boys and girls. This is how God designed an egg and a sperm to produce a baby. Again, we're putting it all in a God has a part in the family from the time a child is born until the time somebody dies. But God's always involved in this whole cycle of birth, growing up, and death. Ages 10 to 13, this is preteen, so we're preparing them for a middle school experience. It would be nice if kids weren't exposed to all this stuff until later on, but unfortunately in today's world, in preschool, in elementary school, things are happening. I got a call from a grandfather who is raising his grandson, and his grandson, again, 4 years old, at preschool, the little child sleeping at nap time next to him is telling him how to masturbate and telling him he should do it. That's a 4-year-old at preschool. It'd be great if we don't need to talk to our kids at an early age. I would be all for that. But they live in a culture that doesn't give us the flexibility of not talking to them. Because if we don't talk to them and somebody else does, then whatever the other somebody says becomes what default true is. All of us, from the time we're born, we're amassing information in this giant pegboard, and whatever peg gets put in that particular hole first is what feels true. And so if we arm them with accurate information, that's what feels true. And what feels true at 4 or 5 or 6 will feel true at 10 and 15 and 20. But if we don't put truth in the peg hole first, somebody else puts a lie in the peg hole, that feels true. And no amount of us trying to combat that when they're then 13 is going to undo something that has felt true for so many years to them. And so trying to instill Christian values when they're in high school If we haven't been doing that up to that point, they've already been contaminated by the world value, and they're not going to be not likely to be receptive to what we try to tell them at that point in time. Concept of purity: what is purity? What does purity mean? Not just purity of sexuality, but just being a person who tries to keep our mind pure. What does that look like? Inform about changes in puberty. And again, here's my recommendation: before they happen. That's a really strong recommendation, by the way. Before a girl experiences her first menstrual cycle, she needs to know that that's going to happen, because it can be really traumatic if they haven't been equipped, if they haven't been armed with information. I was working with a girl, late teens, but basically as she was growing up, mom was non-existent from an emotional standpoint, or willing to take care of anything, and teen girl for the first several months had to be supplied by her teen brother, because no parent was involved in taking care of her. Again, that shouldn't happen. That's abandonment trauma. Let our kids know what's going to happen. Some things just kind of culture recognizes, like, guys, you're going to get hair where you don't normally, or you haven't had hair yet. Your voice is going to, you begin a sentence down here and up here, and then like all in the same sentence, you're getting 3 different octaves. That's just normal. It's okay. It's just your body doing what your body does, and one day that's going to stop. But people need to know what's going to happen to their body. And some things just aren't generally known. An example, our son Griffin came home one day. He was in late middle school, high school, one or the other, I don't remember. He said, "Hey, guess what my friend," and he called his name, "told me today." I said, "I don't know." He said he thought he had cancer. Wow, okay, that got my attention. He told me he had a bump on his nipple, and that he thought that was cancer and he was going to die. And Griffin said, "I told him, no, my dad told me about that. That's normal." And his friend was like, "I thought I was going to die." Man, just armed with just a little bit of information. It's normal for under one or both nipples, when boys are going through puberty, for a hard knot to develop. It eventually goes away. Just a normal part of development. But if you don't know that, and then you discover that about your body, it's like, oh my goodness, what do I do? So arm our kids with what's going to happen to their body before they start going through puberty. Sex is a gift from God. Sex is a good thing. It's not the nasty, it's not wrong, it's not dirty, but God put some boundaries, and obedience to those boundaries, it matters to God. Again, we're not making sex to be the biggest thing in the world, and if you mess it up, you're a horrible person and you're messed up for life, but we're letting them know it is important. Living a holy life involves our sexuality. It's not just our sexuality, but our sexuality is included in that. Hopefully by the time they're 12, 13 years old, they have been equipped with all the information that our culture is going to flood them with. And that includes, again, at this point, with just cultural conversation, talking about gender dysphoria or trans issues and homosexuality and boundaries around dating and sexting. What is pornography? All of these topics. They need to be armed with accurate information, because, again, if we don't give them accurate information, somebody else is going to give them very hurtful or unhealthy misinformation. But we need to arm them for the culture that they're going to be navigating, because our culture is extremely, sexuality is just everywhere, and it's very invasive. So begin early, be consistent, share accurate information, don't withhold the accurate information. And then I would encourage, provide safe, nurturing touch, in an appropriate way. If people are starved for something, they'll settle for any crumb or whatever they can get. And so if I'm starved for physical affection, I'll take it from whoever's willing to provide it. But if I'm filled up on a day in, day out basis, I get all the hugs and all the cuddles and all the snuggles, when I'm coming along, and then they don't magically stop because my body matures, then I'm in a healthy spot. I've talked to several adult women who, as they were going through the teen years and their body became the body of a young woman and not the body of a little girl, their dad suddenly withdrew all the affection. Now, that's about dad. That's not because there's something wrong with them now that they've physically developed. And I have no idea what it is about dad. I can take some guesses. The dad's probably uncomfortable. And maybe it's dad doesn't want to do anything inappropriate, or maybe it's dad has his own issues. Who knows? But the message that they got was there's something wrong with them and Daddy doesn't love them anymore. I'm just saying we need to be proactive and not be miscommunicating something by suddenly not providing safe, nurturing affection and appropriate touch. And the same thing with moms and boys. Just because they're 13 and they pretend like they don't want to hug doesn't mean that they don't. And there might need to be a conversation. I'm not saying like force hugs on them and they're trying to run out the door. But I'm also saying just because they give that initial, I'm a big man now, don't hug me, doesn't mean the heart inside doesn't still long for a hug. So that may need to take some communication and some understanding and a conversation to figure out when am I going to give you a hug anyway, and when am I going to respect the fact that you don't want one. React well, process your emotion later. Kids are going to do things. They're going to say things. They're going to find funny cartoons. Talking with a mom just a couple of weeks ago, a teenage son showed her what he thought was a funny cartoon, and it contained a cartoon of a guy with an erection, and Mom went ballistic. I mean, ballistic. Started insulting him, belittling him, calling him all kinds of names. It tapped into something in Mom. And that's why I say react the best that we can. Go process whatever got triggered in us somewhere with a healthy person. But be aware, and if you have landmines that are likely to get stepped on because of your history, be aware of that. Again, my encouragement is deal, and we'll get to this in just a moment with like the next bullet point here. Be a sexually healthy parent. If you've got baggage that's going to contaminate your conversation with your kids, deal with your baggage. It may be really difficult. Again, week in, week out, I walk with people through, and tears come up, the worst of stuff. It's never pleasant to have to deal with stuff that's back there if we haven't dealt with it. It's not fun, it's not enjoyable, it's not comfortable, but it's necessary to be healthy. So if there's hurt and pain or sexual secrets in your world, my encouragement, get some support around you and take a courageous step and begin to deal with that. I can share this from my background, and my story's out there in print and on podcasts all over the place. There's nothing I'm going to share with you that's not just pretty common knowledge. Somebody opened the door to sexuality very early in my life. By age 4 or 5, it was there. Put a lot of pieces of that puzzle together in the last 7 or 8 years, but it was just a big question mark and a lot of shame and secrecy for most of my life. Before beginning recovery in 2002, anything around sexuality was just this big dark secret and a lot of shame. Well, when Griffin was really little, he was probably 2, 3 years old. We're in Walmart in Greensboro, North Carolina, walking through the store near the checkout line. There's a magazine cover. There's a woman on the cover, and he just looks over and says, "Dad, do you think she's pretty?" Now, he's 2, 3 years old. "Dad, do you think she's pretty?" I've got all this shame and secrecy about anything connected to sex or romance. And in that moment, I don't even give him an answer. I just get all flustered, like I'm panicking. I don't know what to do, because I have not dealt with my own stuff. Well, my reaction sent a loud, clear message that it's not okay to ask if a woman's attractive or not. It's not the message I intended to send, but it's the message that got communicated. Had to go back and do some cleanup. But again, to the best that you're willing and capable of doing, be as healthy as you can be, because it'll be much easier to have healthy conversations with your kids. Things to keep in mind. Number one, your child, and it doesn't matter if they're 4 or 5 years old or 15 years old. Your child might be struggling with something related to sex and you just don't know it. The fact that you don't know it doesn't mean it's not there. The fact that you're not aware doesn't mean somebody has never touched them in an inappropriate way or made comments to them in an inappropriate way. It doesn't mean that they don't have thoughts or images in their head that they're struggling with. What do I do with that? We don't know it. I'm just saying keep a mindset of there could be something beneath the surface, and at some point it may surface. I was doing a presentation at Lipscomb University years ago for their summer program, and two moms walked in, and I heard one mom saying to the other, my son's homeschooled, he's with me all the time, I know he's never seen porn. And so in the presentation, I tried to do a very gentle challenge to that concept. Just because you don't know it doesn't mean they're not. And I got an email about a week later. Dear Steve, I never thought I would be writing an email like this, and boom, boom, boom. I took your advice when I went home. I talked to my son, and as I was talking, he broke down crying, and he's been struggling with porn for the last 2 years. Again, just because we don't know it doesn't mean that it's not there. I'm not saying every child is struggling with a secret porn addiction. I'm just saying it's helpful if we don't approach from a mindset of we know it's not there. Approach our mindset of there could be something, and if so, hopefully at some point we'll know that it's there. Punishment won't fix anything. Punishment's not a solution. Now again, please, before you find me later or send me an email, I'm not saying that punishment is never a part of discipline. I'm just saying that if your child is struggling with something about sex, punishment won't fix it. Again, I had a teen in my office with his dad. They had discovered that the teen had been looking at some same-sex-oriented porn. And so we were talking and looked at some different options, and Dad finally says, nope, this is what I'm going to do. I'm just going to make him play sports, and that's all we're going to do, and he's just going to spend all his time playing sports, and that's going to fix this. Never heard another thing from him. I have no idea, but I doubt that fixed anything. And taking your teen's phone away for a month or 3 months and saying, if I ever find porn on it again, I'll take it away for a year, isn't going to fix anything because it's not dealing with what's causing it. So again, sometimes boundaries and punishment are helpful discipline. Just recognize it's not going to fix whatever's driving the behavior. If you don't have an open or a safe relationship already, it's going to be really hard to address this area. Like if we can't talk about missing homework, or if we can't talk about not doing chores and without it turning into like World War III, it's going to be really hard to talk about this area. And so I might need to take a step back and do some relational mending. We might just need to figure out how are we going to improve our relationship and do that. And it might let's get some help. Let's a mentor, somebody else who has raised some kids and they have good relationship. Let's get some counsel here and fix our relationship so that we can talk about more intimate or difficult concepts without it turning into a battle. You can learn a lot about sex from a can of Pringles. Gilly, you're doing a great job, girl. Good stay, girl. Good stay. Now, if any of you, I was here a couple of years ago and we did this presentation for a few classes. I don't know if any of you were any of you here for that presentation a few years ago? I got a few hands. Okay. So hold on to the secret for just a minute. Don't let the cat out of the bag with what you learn about sex from a can of Pringles. Anybody in here like potato chips? Just like as a snack? Okay, your hand went up. Would you help me out for just a second? Because I'm just going to give you the can of Pringles. You said you like potato chips. You don't have to stand up here in front of everybody and eat them all, but if you would go ahead and just put one, and is it good? Is it fresh? Do you like this particular can of Pringles? Okay, now you looked up at me and you smiled, a little bit of a laugh. What are you thinking? Just thought in your mind right now.
These aren't Pringles.
They're not Pringles, but the can says Pringles. And there's a picture of a Pringle potato chip on the front. But they're not Pringles. What are they?
They're mini Oreos.
Yeah, they're mini Oreo cookies. Do you like mini Oreo cookies by me?
Yes.
Okay, so are you happy with what you got?
Sure.
Okay. Enjoy the mini Oreo cookies. Sorry that you didn't get Pringles. So here's what you learn about sex from a can of Pringles. What is on the outside doesn't necessarily, good girl. Okay, back here. What is on the outside doesn't necessarily mean that's what's going on the inside. Down. Good girl. So word on the street, the Oreo cookies heard that America's #1 selling snack is a potato chip. And the Oreo cookies were afraid nobody would want them and they would just be left to sit on the grocery store shelf, and they didn't want to be left all alone. And so they hid in the Pringles can, thinking somebody would be more likely to take them home because everybody likes potato chips. And I'm just saying our kids do the same thing and we do the same thing. I don't care how old we are, we do the same thing. We hide parts of ourselves that people might not approve of or they might be afraid of or reject. And so we present the part of us that we think people will be okay with. It's frequent that children are dealing with things from a sexual standpoint and they're ashamed, embarrassed, afraid of a response. And so they just keep that locked inside. And sometimes they lock it inside because they were told when an abusive moment happened, you better not tell anybody this. And sometimes, and I'm just sharing real life things I've heard in my counseling room, sometimes it's from a youth minister, you don't want me to lose my job, do you? So just don't tell anybody about this. Sometimes it's from a family member, you don't want our family to be broken up, do you? So just keep this quiet. But when they're in the moment, when they're told basically don't tell, a lot of times they don't tell. And they may not tell for 20 or 40 or 50 years. And so just know that sometimes what's going on the inside, you just don't see it on the surface. And I'm just saying that's a normal dynamic. We all do that on some level. But it definitely, things around sexuality can take on the same dynamic. Avoid comments that discourage disclosure. Like if you just typically make judgmental comments or condemning comments and your child overhears that, they're filing that away. As a dad, if you see a pregnant teenage girl and you make some derogatory comment, what your teenage girl or what your little girl who grows up to be a teenage girl, what she's filing away is, well, if that ever happens to me, I know I can't tell dad. And again, I hope that situation doesn't happen, but if it does, do we want them coming and sharing with us and letting us help them figure out and navigate it? Or do we want them locking us out of it and making decisions on their own? I mean, for me, whatever's going on, I'd rather my kids bring me into it and allow me to at least try to help them make decisions and explore options. So to the best that we can, just self-monitor and get into a habit of not saying things that would keep our kids from sharing with us if something needed to be shared. Actively commit, like be proactive and commit to respond in a positive way. If you're struggling with something or something ever happens to you, here's what you can expect from me. Expect that I will listen. But before I say anything, I'll listen. I'll do my best to try to hear you. I'll do my best to understand what's going on, understand what it's like for you. That will be my goal, is just to try to understand from you what's happening. Here's what I will do my best not to do. I commit, I will not preach a sermon at you. I will commit to control my emotional reaction the best I can. And again, limit it to what you actually can do. Had a mom of a teenage boy who had told teenage boy, it doesn't matter how bad what you do is, I can handle it. Well, teenage boy then told her what he had done. What he had done is sexually abuse every other sibling in the family. And there were a lot of siblings in the family. Mom couldn't handle it. Mom shut down for almost a year. And I'm just saying, don't overpromise. Don't commit to something that you can't do. And to tell your child, I can handle anything, is probably not a reasonable, responsible thing to say. Whatever you share, if I need help, I'll get help to learn how to handle it. Now, that's a more realistic, doable thing. So avoid committing to something that I'm just not capable of doing. Like, I'll make sure that never happens to you again. I can't ensure something will never happen to my child. If a child is struggling with something, and that can be confusion about sexual identity, I'm struggling with a sexual behavior that I know I shouldn't be doing, but I can't stop it. If there's a struggle going on, here's some recommendations. First off, take a big, deep breath, like into 5, and then out to 10. And I might need to do that a couple of times. Okay, number one, just going to try to regulate myself so that I'm in a better place of being able to respond. And then let me just listen. Please keep sharing with me. Tell me more about that. What's it like for you in this family dealing with that? And just listen. Do the best that you can to not jump into defense mode and try to defend yourself or reactions that they may have seen from you in the past. It's not the time to defend you. It's a time to hear and understand them. Try to get the most full picture possible. And we don't have time to do a deep dive into this. That's different presentation. But oftentimes what they have words to tell us may not be enough words to give us the whole picture. And sometimes their words, we go down this direction assuming some things, but that's not what they're really trying to tell us. And so I'm just saying, do the best that we can to understand or help them be able to paint the whole picture before we take off down a path of response. And then try to identify resources and help them with next steps. Okay, thank you for sharing with me. I'm so glad you were able to talk about this. Here are some possible things that you or we might need to do next. If the struggle, and this is where healthy boundaries and being able to differentiate you and them, not enmeshment, but they're their own person, you are your own person. You need to deal with your reaction. They need to deal with their struggle. But sometimes, especially if they're younger, here are some things that we as a family are going to need to do. But if they're old enough, if this is a 17, 18, 19-year-old, this is pretty much going to be their thing to deal with. And so my job is to be the supportive person. What can I do to help? But recognize that this has to be their deal. I cannot manage a porn struggle on my 19-year-old. That's my 19-year-old's thing to deal with. I can be a cheerleader. I can help them identify resources that they then decide whether they want to use or not. But those are some ideas. Wanted to close out with this one. There's way more to them than their struggle. Hey, that struggle may be a significant thing, and to them, it may be the only thing in their life right now. That's not an uncommon deal, especially depending on what the struggle is. If it's around sexual identity confusion, to them, this is the only thing in their life. To us, hopefully, this is just a piece. There's way more to life than this. And just don't forget that you are way bigger. You are more to me than this struggle right here. Okay. What do we have? Just 5 minutes or so? I'm trying to read that clock. Is it 10:25? Okay. Very quickly, if abuse is disclosed, I have, as a parent, I have been the parent, me and my wife sitting on the couch in the child psychologist's office. Our kid has shared that they have been abused. What do we do? I've been in that role. At this point in my life, I'm in the role of being in the counseling chair, of helping people navigate when this has happened. So what I'm going to share is coming from a combination of clinical training, and we learned it the tough way as parents. Don't press for details, because the brain doesn't encode traumatic things like it encodes just normal stuff, different part of the brain involved. So trying to get a lot of detail is not likely to be beneficial or even realistic in that moment. So don't press for details, just whatever big picture they're sharing, just go with that for the time. Please don't express disbelief. Even if you don't believe it, please don't let them know that you don't believe it, because if it turns out that it's real and you have said, I don't believe you, and you communicate that either facial expression or you said the words, they have been way more traumatized by your disbelief than whatever has happened. So don't do anything that would communicate to them, I don't believe what you're saying right now. There will be time to figure out, is this true or not? But in the moment right now, that initial defense mechanism of this can't be true. We got to deny that there's no way that that person, they love kids. They would never do. Not the time for that to come out. And then it's not time to confront the abuser. Don't jump in your truck with a pickup, the pickup and the gun rack in the back and drive and peel up somebody's house and bang on their door and you better get out here because we got to talk. I don't know that it needs to be that, but certainly in that moment it doesn't need to be that. The focus at the moment is my child, not the perpetrator. I'm a big fan of deal with the perpetrator, but not in that way as much as I would be jumping in the truck with you. Logic hat on, disciple of Jesus hat on, it's not the way to do it, but I get wanting to do it. I even bring Gilly with you in the pickup truck. Validate their courage to tell. Wow, I can only imagine how difficult that is to talk about. I'm so thankful you were able to tell me. Good job. Commit to do what you can do to keep them safe. I can't promise it'll never happen again. I will do everything that I'm able to do to keep this from happening in the future. Okay. Get professional help, and I would say quickly, and I'll stay off my soapbox as much as I can, but if it involves sexual trauma, find somebody who is well trained in sexual trauma. This is not the time to go to a counseling office because it's next door to your house or because it's at your church. Find somebody who has been well trained in sexual trauma. I've done cleanup in so many situations from people who've been to other counselors who just didn't have training. Maybe good counselors, but they didn't have training in sexual trauma. They did massive damage. Take the time, do the homework, ask for referral. Ask about their training. Where did you get your training in sexual trauma? Before we bring our child to you, I want to know, where did you get the training? And if they say something like, well, that's just in my scope of practice, thank you, find somebody else. Anybody who has training will be thrilled to tell you because they spent a lot of dollars and a lot of hours to get the training. And they should be able to happily tell you where they got their training. Learn about the effects, the dynamics of trauma, and hopefully that will help navigate what's coming up next. Real quickly, we're going to wrap up here in about a minute. We have the resources, the 2 Burns books that I mentioned, and then this book for parents. That makes up what I would call our younger children set. God Made Your Body, How God Makes Babies, and then Angry Birds and Killer Bees. This is a book for parents. What are questions kids are going to ask at different stages of development? What are things you need to cover? Again, this is a parent book, not a book to give your child. But if questions come up, I had a colleague years ago who used to say this, and I think it's pretty funny and actually probably not a bad idea. Keep this in your bathroom. Just let it live in your bathroom. And if your child ever asks a question and you don't have a good answer, that's a great question. Give me a minute. I got to go to the bathroom. But when I get back, we'll talk about it, okay? But again, that set 1, 2, 3 books is recommended for children of or parents of younger children. In my opinion, from my experience in working with teenagers for 18 years or so, Hooked. Every child before they walk into their freshman year of high school should have this information. Whether you read the book and then you just basically talk about it, or whether they read the book. I am not a reader. I hate reading. But I took it to the gym, and in 3 days, just in between sets, I'd read the book. It's a great book, and basically how our casual sex culture is affecting our young people. Our culture is inundated in the conversation of trans and sexual dysphoria and homosexuality. Rubel Shelley has written a great, concise book. Now, there's an 800-plus page deep theology dive version of this. This is the less than 200 pages for us who don't want the big theology book. Here's what people are saying the Bible says, but here's what actually the Bible says. Here's what people say about 2,000 years ago. This is what actually was happening 2,000 years ago. And then we have 3 different DVDs. This presentation and a theology of sex is on DVD number 1. Understanding Sexual Identity and Understanding Addictive Sexual Behavior is volume 2. And then there's a volume 3 that has a G-rated presentation that's really the foundation of what all of this stuff is built on. And that's volume 3. They're all available. Donation suggestions are out there. And thank you guys. If there's another slide that has a donation, we can put it up there. But that's it. And guys, thank you again for your presence here. Best wishes as you try to navigate this road with the kids who are in your life. Robert, thanks for the chance to be here this morning. Come on, here you go. Come.
Mike, yep, I sure do. Hey, speaking of children, let's go get ours. Thanks for being here today.